Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League, and it very, very nearly does because we should timestamp this. It's just gone 10 a.m. on the morning of Tuesday, July the 16th. Clayton Fernandez is with me. How are you, Clayton?
I am good. I'm good. We're back. FPL Head is back on. We've got prices. Well, some of them.
We've got a lot of prices, and that's what we're going to cover here. I should say my name's James in case you didn't already know that. We're not going to go too deep into strategy or anything like that, purely because the game might open as early as sort of late afternoon today, possibly, we think, although probably more likely tomorrow. And I'm aware that they could change things like the chips, etc. So I don't want to go down a route of, oh, can we bench boost in game week one or anything like that when I don't know if that's going to be there. That conversation will be to come. What Clayton and I are going to discuss here is some of the pricing that we've got so far. And I guess what at this stage, our initial reaction is to that. I mean, we're assuming we've still got 100 million budget. It's going to be funny when we've got 150. Erling Haaland came in at 15 million Clates. What was your reaction?
I was happy with that because it gets boring personally for me when everyone just owns him. There were long periods where he's permacapped. So I do think with the information we've got, it forces a decision. But like you said, there's lots of discussions around what's the budget, and then obviously we'll get onto other people's pricing to see if it's affordable to still have him as well as other facilitators, let's say. But that in isolation, I really like it. He's a most expensive fantasy Premier League asset ever. So 15 million, I like it in isolation. I think it forces a decision with the information we have right now. But what about you? What was your take on it?
I think it's the most impressed I've ever been with a price that we must always stress. And what I always say, we're not the target market, right? I want the game to be more difficult, make the decisions tougher. I realize most people and their target market is just get as many of your favorite players in as you can. I get that. But I don't think pricing them at 15 million has removed those people from being able to still do that. And
No.
also for the rest of us makes us go, oh, holy, that's not an absolute given anymore. And I know there was quite a bit of, well, he scored less points last year, so surely he's coming down in price. I see some people think he was coming in at like 13 and stuff like that. No, I think their big reflection must be that at 14 million last year, and admittedly, they did have a great run of fixtures at the start that he opened up at like what 82%
Yeah.
ownership in game week one or something. Like that's not good for anybody under that circumstance because then no one's celebrating their captaincy returns or anything like that. So now there's a choice there. There's a choice to say, any single week. I mean, the game week two example that a lot have already mentioned are at home to Ipswich. If you don't have him, get your sofa and get behind it because it's a dangerous one. It's one of them, you could get the sort of hole that I don't want to say end your season in game week two, but would would put
It
you
puts
in
you in the millions.
a lot of trouble if he does very well. And you don't want to go against that at the start, which I
No.
get.
Do you have
And
any
then
early thoughts on whether you'll be? I know we don't have everyone's prices and stuff yet, so you can't really draft a squad, but do you have any early thoughts on whether you'll start with him or not?
my initial reaction as soon as I saw that price was no.
Same. But then I
And
changed
look,
my mind for a reason. I'll
there's
tell you.
there's context that's needed for that. If Mo Salah sort of hobbles into game week one for whatever reason, because that's the player I think most of us probably feel, yeah, okay, Salah's got Brentford at home in two. When City have got a good fixture in game week four as well at home to Brentford. Salah's got Forest at home. That one feels like, yeah, okay, I can take him on with Mo Salah as a different
Yeah.
example. So my initial reaction is, yeah, I'm probably gonna take it on, I think.
So I was the same, and then I started going back into my tinker mode, and I haven't actually done this yet, but I want to play around on Pete's site, FPL.team. Shout out to our friend. But I am very much like a price point kind of guy when I start the season. So I look at a chunk of 2 to 4 game weeks max when I'm drafting my game week one squad. And just thinking, okay, if I start with him 15 mil, I probably, again, it's hard to know, but I probably won't be able to get Salah in there as well. But then at least I can have him for Ipswich, Haaland that is, and then come off and go anywhere and then kind of react to the early information. Or there's always someone that flies out from under the radar and kind of react to the new information of the season, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I did change from my initial instinct, which was no, I'm going without two. I want to start with the most expensive and then jump off and divvy it out elsewhere.
And that's generally quite a sensible strategy is to start at your highest points because as much as there are, and we're going to talk about some of the great forwards sort of priced in sort of the 9, 8 million bracket, you can go with three of them that look absolutely fantastic. If you change your mind and decide you need to get to Haaland or want to,
Good luck.
well, I think you're just pulling the wild card.
Yeah.
I think. And if the chips are the same, again, I don't want to talk about it too much, but if they are, I think you will see a group of people that are going to bench boost in game week 1 and wildcard in game week 2.
Is it?
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
copying you from last
I
season, even though
think
you
no, I
didn't wildcard.
didn't wildcard in
You
game week
bench
2.
boosted. I was trying to get that in there.
Again, I don't want to talk about it too much because we don't even know if that's still going to be there. But I think if it is, some people will be pushing that narrative, and I can understand it with the lack of blanks and doubles we're going to have later in the season. So yeah, it's not as straightforward as, oh, I want to go against him, because you need to have your plan of what if you change your mind. Now, part of that plan can be I'm not going to no matter what, but I think contingency is probably advised if you are to take it on. And look, that will be part of what the wild card is there for people early on. And
Yeah.
I think that would be the only way around it, really. What are you going to do? I'll take Salah out instead, and you're just thumping the money around way too much. So yeah, there's a decision to be made, and I would recommend one of the things I see every year when this happens with the price reveals is he's locked in, he's locked in.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I see it every year, and I think, calm down, kids. You ain't seen teams in pre-season yet or anything. But yes, my initial reaction would be to take Haaland on, and
Fair
I
play.
must say my initial reaction was I'd maybe take Salah on as well, but having thought about
Bloody
it a
hell.
bit
Who are you going to
more.
go with then?
Well, look, Salah's in at 12.5. I think, to go back to Pete's side, Pete's predictions on his
He's
site
been
have been
spot on. Yeah.
incredibly accurate. And I know he had Mo Salah spot on at 12.5. But, you look down at the players underneath Salah at the moment, your Palmer, Saka, Foden or KDB, Watkins, Bruno Fernandes, Isak, Odegaard, Havertz. Like what? You could have all of them and just pick who you want for captaincy week to week off of that, and alternative Liverpool options further down like Diaz, Gakpo, and stuff as well. So
It's
I think
interesting that because
I think it's
go
the
on.
it's the 2 weeks where Haaland's got the two scary fixtures though. You think, yeah, Mo's going to be the best to take him on most likely.
Yeah. But what you said there about grouping them, I feel like the last few years, captaincy and premiums, it's felt like two or three options, maybe. Whereas there, you've just grouped about six or seven that are real credible captaincy assets that are all, well, 10.5 and below. So be interesting to see how the drafts look once we've got the full
There
prices.
will be teams out there that won't start with Haaland or Salah,
Yeah, yeah, I
and
don't
what you
doubt
can
that.
have will be absolutely disgusting. Um, so I don't hate it. I think it probably, again, we've spoken about how difficult it would be to get to Haaland if you don't own and you need to. Like if you go no Haaland and no Salah, you're definitely wild card if you need to
Yeah.
change that about, aren't you? So, but it wouldn't be that much from a Palmer to a Salah. That might mean you're downgrading a Vardiol to a 4.0. That's a little bit easier to just be able to manipulate. The Haaland one is obviously really difficult. Yeah, I
Salah's
think,
price, think it was fair. 12.5.
yeah, I don't think that's, you
Finished
couldn't
on
come down
13.4 last season.
you couldn't come down much cheaper than that. Um, if anything, would have liked it. I mean, it's the same for me every year, higher, higher, higher for a lot of the players. But actually, this is probably I'd give them some credit. I'm normally quite critical on the price, and I think they've largely done a pretty good job
Me too.
this year. I mean, off the bat with the Haaland one, it opened, I think, most content creators' eyes to say this suddenly just got way more interesting in terms of plans. So Mo at 12.5 is reasonable. Cole Palmer's had the biggest ever price increase for an
They're the
FPL
biggest ever,
player.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I think 5.5 jump, isn't it, from his starting price last year? I don't think anybody else had been more than five jump
Highest point
previously.
score.
Even the likes of Harry Kane, Riyad Mahrez, Jamie Vardy, none of them
Wow.
more than 5 million jump.
Highest point scorer in the game last season, 244 points.
Well, it's completely justified, isn't it? You think as well, largely playing in a team that struggled for a lot of last
Yep.
season, obviously finished the season very well. But if Chelsea sorted their life out and became a top four contender properly this year, then there's nothing to say that he won't go and better his total. So I think he had to go into double figures.
How many? Can you remember how many of his goals were penalties? Because I'll be on. I can't remember.
Ooh,
Yeah, sorry to put you on the
seven
spot
or
there.
eight, maybe. I don't know.
Okay, because I feel like the conversations I've seen on largely Twitter, if I'm being honest, is how much will the penalties sustain and X Y Z. But I do feel like his consistency in the positions he gets himself into, even sure if they don't get 7, 8 penalties again, he'll still kind of be there or thereabouts as like a 200-point player, in my opinion.
We've certainly trod this narrative before, particularly with, say, Bruno
Bruno,
Fernandes.
yeah,
We've absolutely trod this path before, and it stopped for Bruno. But it's worth saying when people did really bring up the penalty narrative for Cole Palmer last year, it did feel like he started getting a lot of attacking returns that weren't penalties. So his
yeah,
returns are still
they're
extraordinary.
sustainable.
And it's worth saying, I think from Chelsea's perspective, obviously game week one is really tough, playing the champions. But then their run sort of game week two to game week seven or so,
It's
before they go to
nice.
Liverpool in game week eight is a really good run.
Yeah,
Um, One interesting point of Cole Palmer one of the prices that I think made a lot of people pay attention to was Christopher and Kunku's
yeah, 6.5 million
at
midfielder as well.
6.5. Now, this is where you get into sort of more club debate. Is that worth a 4 million saving? Will it, if Nkunku plays regularly, I think it will be,
That is,
actually.
I'm
And it's not
watching
just,
pre-season very
yeah,
closely.
it's not to say you can't have both. And knowing Chelsea, they're probably going to invest. Um, I think there's a little element of the unknown, with perhaps Palmer's positioning next year with Enzo Maresca taking on. I mean, Dewsbury Hall's coming at 6. And I tell you what, if he plays where he plays for Leicester, and we assume that's why he's been bought, I, people
You
can rule that
interested yet?
out. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
So
Yeah, honestly,
I can't confess to have watched him much at Leicester last season. So relying on you to give me the gold on this one.
I'm sure they won't be the same as Leicester, and obviously caliber of opponents is very different. But he was the lieutenant at Leicester, right? And basically charged with almost being like a second forward. So don't have a pre-existing thought process on that. That's Dewsbury Hall and Kunku, I think, are two really to watch during
What
the
was
course of
the
pre-season.
I've not been so tuned into Slack recently. Our good friend Gary Mantle, did he have any thoughts on Nkunku's price? Because I feel like Twitter again went into bargain of the century sort of thing.
Correspondent week kicks off on August the 5th. I shall
Lovely
remind
stuff.
you. No, I don't know Gary's thoughts. I think Gary's thoughts probably be similar to mine. Let's see what it looks like in pre-season. Is Nkunku going to be the 9 even? I mean, imagine he's 6.5 midfielder and he becomes Chelsea's number 9.
Jesus, that's yeah, that's going to be disgusting levels of
It
ownership.
Nkunku feels like one that, and it's justified on last season, because of how little he played and his injury problems. But it's one that, like, further down the line might look like a
It could
game
look
breaker.
silly. Yeah.
The Arsenal pricing, Clates, I think is pretty interesting, in terms of the attacking options. So we got Saka in at 10, Odegaard 8.5, Havertz obviously reclassified to a forward at 8.
Yeah.
Um, that's a really interesting debate across those three. I think that, like, the difference between Saka and Odegaard feels right.
Yep.
Um, and Havertz feels right at that price as a forward as
Yeah.
well. They will
I
feel good.
I really like Havertz, 8 million forward. Obviously, you have to keep an eye if Arsenal. I think Arsenal will sign an attacker. I don't know whether that will be a wide forward or an actual kind of traditional number 9. So keep an eye on that. But I think he will be Arsenal's number 9 for 98% of the season. And I really like that. So yeah,
I mean, all of this comes with the caveats of
injuries, suspension.
signings, etc. I
Yeah.
mean, you might buy Ivan Toney, and then suddenly his 7.5 price might look absolutely ridiculous, for
Yeah.
example. And we do think Tony will probably still be on the move somewhere. Yeah, my instinct was Havertz really nice at 8 million, actually. I think it was Baker from above average.
Did a
Put a
really good
little,
thread on that. Yeah.
yeah, little thread out about what the price, the movement of reclassification price would have meant to his points, and he would be worse off. Basically, I think because he'd said that he was quite a bit of a bonus hogger last year as a midfielder,
Yeah.
so it wasn't going to benefit him moving to a forward. But also remembered his returns from sort of February onwards was so good. I mean, if he was to replicate that, then he's absolutely worthwhile having at 8 million.
when he played as Arsenal's number nine, he basically got a return almost every game. So yeah, definitely one to keep an eye on. For Saka, I think keep an eye on pre-season. Obviously, he got to the Euros final, and I think you said that with Sud yesterday in terms of game week one players that got to the Euros final might not be there. So yeah, probably won't be starting the season with Saka, and keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I mean, particularly your Sakas, your Palmers, and I think even Rodri. These players are going to be doubtful for game week one. I think
Yeah,
um, it's not just a physical element; it's the mental as well. How a player's going to respond to what's happened to them, and that I think hangs over the England players a little bit, where I'd almost be okay. So I can take maybe Palmer on with Nkunku, but then one of the things with that is, sure, we keep an eye on saying Nkunku in pre-season. You ain't going to see a lot of him with Palmer.
no, that's true. Yeah,
So there's going to
there's
be an
certain
element of
dynamics we don't know. Yeah,
there's
that's
going to
very
be an
true.
element of guesswork all the way through. Whereas I think, say with Saka or Arsenal, that's an easier one. Do we think he's going to play game week one? Okay, yes, I like that fixture. I'd want some of it. Kai Havertz, despite getting to the quarterfinal with Germany, I think that would be fine.
Yeah,
You would imagine. You're not Community Shield's Manchester Derby again, isn't it?
it is.
Must be.
Yeah,
You've got a couple of home games at the Emirates, haven't you? I want to
we have.
say.
We've got Bayer Leverkusen and Leon, I believe.
Yeah. The second one is, I think it's the Sunday, isn't it? I think you're one of
Yeah,
the last friendlies, if I remember correctly. Um, Havertz wasn't the only forward that appealed. Ollie Watkins, hero last Wednesday, which now feels like a lifetime ago. 9 million.
yeah.
Um,
Well, he was the top scoring forward last season.
I mean,
Ended on 8.9.
if you replicate it again, it's extremely interesting. Tough start. West Ham away isn't a gimme, and then obviously they play Arsenal game week two. Look at that run game week 3 to 6 for Watkins, though.
Yeah,
Leicester away, Everton, Wolves at home, at Ipswich away, and then even Manchester United at home if they keep giving up the shots they do. I've actually got Villa top on my ticker for the first 9 game weeks.
really. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think Watkins will be very popular in that run you just said, and even like don't know what Man United will be like this season, but after that, Fulham, Bournemouth as well. So it's like you said, for the first 9 game weeks, the fact that they're top, you can see that.
yeah. If I don't start with Watkins, I see it being someone that I'd almost have as a placeholder for maybe 2 weeks, which
Yeah,
might even be a Tottenham player actually.
go on.
With Leicester away and Everton at home. Well, I mean, we don't know if Sonny's going to come in as midfielder or forward. We think there's going to be a price reveal on Facebook at 12 o'clock today for Heung-Min Son. I mean, it's FPL. Bateman had spotted that you could basically guess the price, but when you put him in as like 10 million, it wouldn't have it. It couldn't understand, i.e., there was too many digits.
Okay,
So we're assuming the top end of the price is going to be is 9.5. We don't know if he's going to be a midfielder or a forward, but you could even, if Tottenham don't buy a forward, leave the money. Richarlison, Leicester away, Everton at home, and then into Watkins if you're concerned if he's going to start game week one. I think with Watkins, because he didn't play as many minutes as, say, a Saka, you're
I think he'll
fine.
be there. Yeah,
Probably fine. I think with Saka, there'd have to be doubt at the moment if you play game week one
yeah, yeah. Right
against
now,
Wolves.
if I had to put my money on it right now, 16th of July, I would say I don't think Saka starts game week one, but there's so much more information to come.
Um, there is one player that I was fairly certain that would probably start with before I'd even seen the pricing.
Before you saw the pricing, go on.
Yeah, almost irrelevant to me.
Okay,
Just based on the fixtures at the start of the season as well. Alexander Isak,
fair. Southampton at home, Bournemouth away.
8.5 million. Not only that, mate, Tottenham at home game week three.
I didn't want to say
Um,
it.
it's fine. They've only scored 10 in their last two home games against us. Wolves away, Fulham away. Yeah, good opening start. Him obviously rest this summer.
Yeah,
No international tournament for him. Um, just a case of if he's fit or not. I think that's for me, that's the clearest one.
sure.
If he'd have been 11 million, I'd been tempted to start with him, I think. So 8
Really?
point, yeah.
Price really was irrelevant for you. You just wanted him, yeah?
Yeah, I cannot see. He's the only player that I look at, and I cannot see how I don't start with him at
Sure.
8.5 as long as he comes through pre-season. Okay,
Yeah.
cannot see how I don't start with him.
Yeah. Can't argue it.
His points returns per minutes, etc. Um, he's great, and I think we should also factor in that Newcastle without European football this year um, may well. push back towards the top four place. I think that will be their target, and they've
Yeah,
got a good start of
I think
fixtures.
they'll
So
bounce back next season.
yeah, Alexander Isak, I'm really interested in. If you had to start with Saka or Odegaard, just to go back to that one,
Oh, I would start with Odegaard just
you
because of
think?
just what I said about not being confident in Saka starting game week 1. Yeah, I don't want to be fiddling around with transfers at the start of the season, personally.
Bruno Fernandes appeal at 8.5?
It does, yeah. Man United, I find a little bit of an unknown. Obviously, you mentioned already last season they conceded the most shots, but I did
They conceded
that.
over 20 shots, I think, to Rosenborg yesterday, by the way.
Oh, did they actually?
Yeah,
Wow.
although it was, a pretty weak team they had out. But it was a few playing Rashford played and a couple of others.
Yeah, I've got this. I can't. There's not much logic behind this. I do have a feeling they will improve quite a lot, and I don't know, like full preseason together. They obviously had a great cup win against Man City, but if I'm being completely honest, I don't really rate Ten Hag that highly, so I'm a bit conflicted. But 8.5 million for Bruno Fernandes, yeah, I think that's a nice price. You know what he's capable of more than anything around the system, the style of play. You know individually what he's capable of. So I think that's good pricing.
Yeah, I agree with that. The only thing I'd probably add on Manchester United is I am slightly amused by it. And everybody should go into pre-season feeling positive. But it does feel very much a surge of positivity around Manchester United fans at the moment, and it is amusing me.
Yeah, me
Who
too.
stands out from these 7.5 million players, Clates? We've got Madison in that price, Luis Diaz, Jared Bowen, Anthony Gordon, Darwin Núñez, Cody Gakpo, Jackson, Tony, and Mateta, who had to get that jump after the finish to last season. He
Yeah,
had.
a couple stand out. You've already mentioned one of the clubs, and for me, it was Gordon. I think, yeah, I look at that kind of opening run, 7.5. I can't remember what his attacking returns were last season, but he's the one that immediately sprung to mind. And for my sins, Darwin Núñez, 7.5. I'm not saying like nailed bank or whatever, but I want to keep an eye on slot system at Liverpool and if Núñez has a big part to play in that. But I just want to gamble with him again for my
I
sins.
presume, having played in the third place Copa America
True.
playoff, that there's no ban incoming. Many of you will have obviously seen the scenes at the end of their semi-final with Colombia, where frankly he's gone into the crowd and he's thrown a couple of punches, but he's also protecting his family. I don't know what the right solution to that is, but there might be a caveat that something might happen there that might suddenly make someone like Cody Gakpo look a lot more interesting,
Yeah.
actually.
Tony's
Um,
obviously the one though, like depending on if he stays at Brentford, if he ends up at a Man United or something, it's even though I think that's unlikely now, but wherever Tony ends up, that could be an interesting price.
I have an inkling with Tony that he will start the season with Brentford and move somewhere else before the window shuts.
That's what I think as well.
Yeah.
And if that is
Um,
the case, I'm not sure I want him with okay, Palace at home and then Liverpool away, Southampton at home in between City away, Tottenham away, and I'm not sure I like that.
yeah, I think you just have to the first two home games we've got are pretty good. But I think you would, unless he's signed a new contract, okay, fine. But he's got 1 year left on his deal. He'd almost, if he started at Brentford, would rule him out for me, I think.
Yeah.
Um, unless I was going on this bench boost game week one strategy and wildcard game week two, maybe could come back into play.
A,
Um,
a
but
player
yeah,
that did
I wouldn't want a player that I'd think, oh, there's a strong possibility you're going to move, and it might be he could move, and it's not like oh he moves to Chelsea, for example, and you he's going to play for Chelsea in this run, but he might not go straight in the team and stuff. It becomes like a really horrible one. You need to
yeah.
see it go somewhere else first, I think.
A player that did well for you in Euro fantasy, Gakpo, obviously same price as Darwin. Do you think any love for that, or is it still classic issues of rotation, minutes?
It'd be clues from pre-season, I think, but he's going to be disadvantaged, I presume, by being the last one back.
Yeah,
Um, Although Jota got to the quarterfinals as well, so it won't be huge difference in that. And Luis Diaz obviously featured for Colombia. When you weight that up, I think on the Liverpool attackers, you do remember that Mo Salah's just had the summer off, and they do have an exceptional run of fixtures. I mean, I said I've got Villa top for my first nine, but I've pretty much got Liverpool top every other metric, whether it's first two all the way to first eight.
seen a lot of people saying tactically under slot they think Salah won't really like hug the touchline anymore as well,
I
and
think that
he
can go
might.
both ways.
Okay,
Yeah, they really do like to have a heavy lean, and it might mean that they leave a player out wide for the quick switch of play. But it also means, I think, when the ball's on the left hand side, he'll come and get involved in central areas more than perhaps he would have. So I do think that, from what I've seen, that argument will hold both ways.
Cool.
Yeah, I think Gordon is probably the standout at that 7.5 value. Jared Bowen could be exceptional.
Mr. Consistent he is, yeah.
Their first five fixtures is quite tough as a cluster, I think. I mean, their first three home games are Villa, City, Chelsea. So I feel like how much Hall potential is there in there.
It's
Um,
interesting. I'm looking through West Ham's fixtures. I can't really see a sustained run where I see green on like an FDR.
there is a period, I think, sort of October, November-ish, where it does get a lot better from, but it's not near the start, actually.
Yeah, you're right. Game week 14 onwards, Leicester, Wolves, Bournemouth, Brighton, Southampton. Yeah, but game week 14 that, so probably not starting with
Yeah, we'll go and have Jared Bowen at 7.3 in that case.
them.
Listen, it's brilliant consistency, but another one's been away with England, so he's obviously going to return to training quite late. I think with the fixtures that Newcastle have at the start, I'd prefer to have Gordon,
Gordon. Yeah,
even though there's an element of risk of him perhaps him not starting game week one. I think Mateta is one to remember as well. He's obviously going to play in the Olympics
good
for
point.
France. So it's not always a straightforward, okay, A versus B. Okay, right. What's the external factors at play here? When are they coming back to preseason training? This with the Olympics is what is in August, isn't it?
Yeah,
So I think
S-
the Olympics final, I think, is
starts in 2 weeks.
a week before game week one. It's just if they win, does he come back and just play? I don't know the answer to
Yeah, I
that.
don't
It's
know.
probably a tracing a bit more of historically what's happened with players who've gone to play to the Olympics. But presumably he's had his break and he's now going towards the tournament. I'm sure they've played a friendly in the last couple of weeks, France's Olympic team. Trent in at 7.
Go on. What's your
Uh,
thoughts?
well, that would have been close your eyes and forget about it a few years ago. I do look at Liverpool's fixtures at the start and think, hello.
Is that from
Ah,
a attacking returns perspective, or
oh,
you
of
think clean
course.
sheets are yeah,
Of course, but what's to say they won't improve defensively as well? You know what the capability is of Trent. If you just look at last year, what 130 points or something, you're obviously not gonna pay that. He did have his injury issues. He also is obviously going to be someone that's going to be back quite late because of England duty. Um, there is
like you said with
a little bit
Watkins
of
though.
unknown of where he plays, although I do think it will predominantly be right back and move inside. Go on,
Sure.
you can say about Watkins, Clates.
No, just what you said about Watkins, same as Trent. Like he didn't really play that many minutes, right? So even though he returns to training later, he'll probably be fresher than the rest. And didn't say same for Bowen, obviously coming back. So yeah,
I think particularly with England players as well, there's a mental aspect as well. What's the
yeah.
mental? Some will be able to get over it quick, some won't.
I'm worried about the
There's
Arsenal boys, bloody losing the league title on the last day and then the Euros. Jesus.
I won't use the word that everyone's thinking. But yeah, Trent at 7 million is interesting. Raheem Sterling isn't at 7 million. Eze feels avoidable because we know there's interest. Um, Richarlison at 7 million might be one. Like I said, under that Watkins scenario, you might look at Richarlison first two into Watkins.
You
Does
got an
leaving money in the bank. But again, it's very dependent on what you see of pre-season with Tottenham. I don't think he's training yet either, by the way. Tottenham's first proper friendly is tomorrow night. He and Udogi, we don't think are properly training yet, but expected to be not far away.
is
So
Richard
obviously he
sorry, go
finished
on.
the season injured, Richarlison, didn't he?
Is he considered like first choice nine or him and Son rotatable there?
Tottenham
What
want to
how
buy one.
okay.
That's clear. But if they can't get what they want, then is it the worst thing in the world to go again with Richarlison and Son and other players can play the position? And we used Kulusevski as a false nine in the last couple of games last season. So it's not a desperation, but Tottenham do want to buy in that position. Yes, there's a chance that Richarlison won't even start the season as a Tottenham player. Marcus Rashford at 7 million with a point to prove, clear pre-season. As I said, he was one of the players who played for Manchester United yesterday.
Yeah.
He dropped to 6.5 a couple of years ago and then became an auto pick halfway through for everybody because he was on fire after the 2022 World Cup, ironically. Yeah, I'd need to see some convincing in pre-season to touch that though. But if
Yeah,
if he
same.
returns to what he's capable, he'll fly into people's teams, won't
Yeah, it's the sort of thing you can see in the 2, 3 weeks before the season. Maybe bags a goal in the Community Shield, and then the popularity starts rising, and Fulham at home, Brighton away. You can see that narrative running.
Julian Alvarez is 7 million and walks into, I wouldn't consider that until Erling Haaland does his hamstring in
Yeah.
pre-season, in which case everything changes quite quickly, doesn't he? Hoyland, I think, would be an avoid at the moment. They've obviously signed Joshua Zirkzee
Yep.
over the weekend as well. So that's an avoid. What do you think about Declan Rice and Rodri in at 6.5, mate?
Are we getting ball recoveries in FPL, James?
We might.
No,
Those prices are justified on what they did last year,
they
by the way.
are. For me, it's just a case of do you want Rice and or Rodri to be one of your City or Arsenal trio? That's it. I think Rodri and Rice is something like I play fantasy football draft. I'll be looking to get them in season long hold. Like Rice, obviously on set pieces. I think he'll be playing a combination of like holding midfield, but as more of an advanced eight as well. So I don't think he'll just be a six all season. Rodri obviously gets on the edge of the box quite a lot these days, and well, you've seen his finishing from that position as well. So I think justified prices for me personally, I just can't really see them ever being one of my preferred trio from those respective teams. What about you?
No, no. I mean, 2 million more for Odegaard over Rice.
Yeah,
Um, and it might be that something develops where Martinelli or Trossard's probably going to be in between that and probably is an option as well,
yeah, good point.
which we haven't got at the moment. So no,
6.5, I do want to mention
go
my
on.
boy, Morgan Gibbs White, opening run, Bournemouth, Southampton Wolves. We go again.
Yeah, Callum Hudson-Odoi is a million cheaper. Forest will get some attention because the only team in the first 3 game weeks doesn't play someone from last year's top eight. Um, and not only that, it's Bournemouth at home, Southampton away, Wolves at home. It feels very reasonable
Yeah,
as an opening 3 fixtures before they go to Liverpool in game week 4, and then they go to Brighton in game week 5. So it possibly is one that's first 3 weeks and then chain it on. But I think Hudson-Odoi could be a really good enabler, or as you said, Gibbs White to hold to move into something else. Chris Wood is in at 6. We think Taiwo Awoniyi is still injured at the moment. But I would remember he exists. I think Chris Wood might be interesting for people if Awoniyi is not going to be available for game week 1. But yeah, just by virtue of them fixtures, Forest are going to get some attention as we get towards game week 1.
the
Um,
6.5 million midfielder bracket has some interesting players in there, to be fair. Like Pedro Neto, McAllister, Kudus is in at 6.5. Any of them tickle your fancy?
Matthias Cunha at 6.5, I think, will be really, really interesting as the season progresses. They have a dog's dinner of a start, though, Wolves. It's pretty bad. Arsenal away, Chelsea at home, Forest away, Newcastle at home, Villa away, Liverpool at home, Brentford away, Manchester City at home. Like it's bad.
But then,
They have an incredible run, I think, starting about game week 10 up to about game week 20, where I mean they've nearly played all of the top eight over that opening period. They get it out of the way. They have a brilliant November, December Wolves.
yeah, yeah, just looking through the fixtures now, it's like Palace at home, Southampton home, Fulham away, Bournemouth home. Like, I'm not going to read through all of it, but yeah, it's a nice looking run.
Yeah, there'll be one to come back to. There is, we'll talk about this more in the forthcoming weeks as well. But once you get beyond sort of the first 5 weeks or so, and then you start looking at rolling difficulty onwards, it is quite striking how a lot of the big clubs all have difficult runs together,
Okay.
partly because of combinations of fixtures where, City play Arsenal and then Man United or something like that. Um, and it does mean a lot of the so-called perhaps expected bottom 6 or 7 all come into quite interesting runs together at a similar time. And Wolves stands out as a really long progressive one as well. We'll talk about that more as we get nearer the start. I think That's interesting, Cunha, to keep an eye. I think Leon Bailey at 6.5 because of Villa's run sort of game week 3 to 6 is really interesting. Alexis McAllister, subject to where he may or may not play in pre-season. I'd be quite interested to keep an eye on where he and Szoboszlai play in pre-season because I think one of them might become a really interesting player this season.
We haven't got
Um,
Szoboszlai's price, have we? Or have we?
no, I don't
No.
think so. No. Bernardo Silva at 6.5 is quite interesting, I
See,
think.
I can't, I don't know what it is. I never quite want him as an asset.
No, I hear that. He's just dropped enough now, though, that I think, oh yeah, he'll park you consistent returns if he plays often enough.
Yeah, I guess.
It's
But
dipped enough now, I think, to be considered.
so 141 points last season. Mm,
It's more than Trent.
yeah, it's a fair point. Yeah, you are right. There'll be consistent returns in there, but I think it'll be consistent threes, fours, fives than sevens, eights.
Okay, what are these sixes stand out?
Go on, read them out. Which ones are you talking about?
You've got a couple of defensives. You've got Van Dijk, Vardiol, Trippier. I think Vardiol stands out from those
Massively.
three.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's going to end up playing left wing again, it probably becomes the best City pick, actually. Um, Van Dijk is going to be relatable to the prices of others. Okay, it's a million cheaper than Trent, but if Jarrell Quansah establishes himself, or what price is Robertson Allison going to be, for example? They do have a good run of fixture at the start, Liverpool. So just by virtue of that, people are going to look defensively. Dewsbury Hall, I'd mentioned. Thiago at Brentford is one to keep an eye on, who's coming at 6 million. He might be the Tony replacement.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on that. Not one to consider for the minute. Rodrigo Muniz is coming at 6. Fulham have a decent little kind of 2 to 6 spell.
Yep.
And you might judge Manchester United away in game week 1 as part of that as well. It's not a terrible price. Chris Wood, I think, is dependent on others, might really appeal as well for those first 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Um,
I think from that group, to be honest, like, yeah, your logic on Wood is spot on. Like, keep an eye on others, but it's only Vardiol that I really look at there. Where I think, yeah, well, I fancy a bit of that.
and obviously we're coming into the realms of pricing here, where there's obviously a lot of players we haven't got yet, but we can assume some of them are going in there, like probably Arsenal defence at that sort of valuation.
Do you think even so? Arsenal obviously do have a tough start. I don't know where they rank on your kind of FDR rolling. In the first five, they go to Villa away, Tottenham away, and City away. So even though defensively, like we know how good they are, is it still something you'd want to start and just
Yeah.
hold?
So what's really interesting about Arsenal, I think it's game week 6 and 7.
Yeah,
Leicester at home and Southampton at home. The reason I mention that is because when you're doing these things like, oh, best over first 5 or first 7, well, this would sum it up really nicely. So in the first 5 weeks, I rank Arsenal 17th
oh,
of the 20 teams over the first 5. But if you add on the Leicester Southampton games and then go first 7, I rank Arsenal fourth.
ha,
So to go from fourth bottom to fourth top.
yeah,
So how do you want to rank that? You want to rank that over first 5, really bad, or first 7, really good?
yeah,
And if you remove the Villa, Tottenham, and Man City away games, in which Arsenal kept a clean sheet at City, we're also keeping a clean sheet at Tottenham until David Raya decided to give Christian Romero the ball for some unknown reason. And you were pretty unlucky actually at Villa.
yeah.
You conceded very early that night, but were unlucky when you lost 1-0. Then 4 home games: Wolves, Brighton, Leicester, Southampton. Yeah, I'm not sure how much I want to be without that. And then it's Bournemouth
Yeah.
away in game week 8. Like, it gets better.
And this is the thing, I to be honest, I probably will go with an Arsenal defender, but it's more, even though there's tough fixtures in there, it's just knowing the capability. Like if there's any team that is capable of shutting anyone out, I think it's Arsenal or City, regardless of the opposition. So yeah, just one to bear in mind, I guess.
Yes, I think that there'll be prices we'll probably get later today, I should imagine, or tomorrow, whenever the game opens. Please don't read into my words. I have no intel on this, by the way, kids. 5.5. I'd say one that really did shop was Fabian Schär at
Okay.
5.5. Caught a bit of
Why is that?
attention because Dan Burn's a million cheaper.
Oh,
So it was almost like, oh, right, well,
I thought you meant
yeah.
like you really wanted Fabian Schär there.
Uh, No, not at 5.5, I don't.
No.
No, not if Dan Burn is at 4.5, considering we know obviously they've got injury issues, so presumably at the moment Dan Burn would continue to play. I presume he would have favouritism at least to start the season, maybe over Lloyd Kelly. Again, it's one to keep an eye on pre-season. But 5.5, no, not particularly interested. We think as well, Kieran Trippier's coming at 6. We do think there's a strong possibility he might not even start the season with Newcastle.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of rumours that he'd potentially be moving on. Hudson Doyle mentioned 5.5 stands out.
There's some nice midfielders there at 5.5. Obviously,
Yeah,
Minter that's gone in at
yeah,
Brighton.
that's that
Sorry.
was one I was going to say. You could Minter, who's gone from Newcastle to Brighton, who's a player we obviously won't have seen a lot of.
Adingra was
Um,
popular in periods.
yeah, Amari Hutchinson obviously did really well at Ipswich and has obviously joined them permanently now at 5.5. And then you go into the list of Everton players. That's the point where I need to reconsider what I'm doing. Yeah, I think 5.5. I think Hudson Odoi stands out. I think
Alanga?
no,
No,
not on what I saw at the end of last season with Forest. I think it's Hudson Odoi over
sure.
Alanga. Um, I think Minter. I think Antoine Semenyo at Bournemouth
Yeah.
might be one again, subject to his involvement in pre-season. Again, even consider there might be some interest in Dominic Solanke possibly. I mentioned Everton players at 5.5. Tarkovsky and Branthwaite have come in at 5, and people have turned their noses up at it. You don't know what Sean Dyche teams
It's
do for
Mr.
fantasy football
Dyche's
kids.
defense.
It's
Yeah,
the right pricing. If it's
it is.
4.5, we all want one. So
Yeah.
it's absolutely correct that they've gone in at 5. Jordan Pickford has been announced at 5 as well, hasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Um, Vicario, Martinez, Leno, Pickford, Onana are all in at 5 million as goalkeepers. If you had to start with one of them 5 now, what are you starting with from that?
Probably Martinez, I think.
Yeah, I think on the fixtures, him or Pickford, I think,
Yeah. I
to
think
start
I
with.
think I would edge Martinez though. Do you think Pickford, like obviously we mentioned about England players and returning late. Is it different for a goalkeeper, do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Again, you don't know what his mental state's going to be, but I would suggest Jordan Pickford is not a shy character, and I would imagine is pretty
I don't know
strong.
why you would ever think
And
that.
no, I mean goalkeepers, I think anyway, have got to be really particularly mentally strong anyway. He's certainly one that he could look back on his tournament with quite a bit of pride of what he did. So I imagine he'd want to come back and start playing for Everton as soon as possible. It's obviously a big season for Everton as a whole as well. Their last season at Goodison Park.
Yeah.
So excuse me. Yeah, I think Pickford. I think that makes Pickford interesting as well because if you compare to Branthwaite and Tarkovsky, okay, right. Whereas at Villa, you could have Concert at like 4.5, right?
That's a good point. Yeah.
So you start thinking things like that. And listen again, we don't know if we're going to have perhaps like a Mikalenko in at 4.5 or something. We don't know at this stage. But yeah, that would make me think probably more Pickford
Yeah, that's a
at
good
this
point.
stage.
There are lots of well, regular playing defenders from good teams at 4.5, and we've obviously got a couple of the promoted boys coming at 4 million as well. So it
Yeah,
did make me laugh though. Everyone well, not everyone. I saw a lot of people raving about Martinez coming in at 4.5, and I just keep thinking about the shot stat.
yes, and you're absolutely right. But this needs proper digging into Manchester United with and without him.
Okay,
That's what needs digging in here. I think he's their most important player.
I
That's the
agree.
conclusion
I
I've
do
come
agree.
to. Um, if he's going to be fit, and he'll play if he's fit.
They'll improve.
Yes, yes, we need to properly when we look at Manchester United. I think now, if he's going to be fit and available, we need to look at what do they look like with him, what do they look like without him. And he played at what 60-70% capacity in the FA Cup final, and they were much better just having him there.
Yeah, no, that's a good
So
point.
that's important, I think. United without Martinez, really bad. With him, I think we can expect better. There's a few that stood out at 4.5. I think it was interesting. A lot of people going, Ariola at 4.5, completely forgetting that they had him at 4.0 and wanted to kill him for most of last season. And then benched him when he got all his return.
Yeah,
I think Flecken at 4.5 is pretty good, actually, but the starter fixtures isn't great, I would suggest. There's some others that stood out at 4.5. Ray and 8 Nori,
Hmm.
but shit fixtures, as already mentioned with Wolves. Mark Gay at Palace, decent start, I think, overall. Likely to be some interest, possibly on the outside. I mean, imagine if he went to Liverpool,
Yeah.
as an
I don't,
example.
I've not seen many linked with him, to be fair, but
No, but I'm sure there will be some interest. Anthony Robinson of Fulham, 4.5. Good run again, sort of game week 2 to 6.
I do like him.
Lewis Dunk at 4.5. Obviously, a little bit unpredictable what we're going to get from Brighton at this stage. But I mean, if you look at rotation, if you hit it right, sort of Forest and Brighton even. So Forest first three and then Brighton, Ipswich and
Mm,
Nottingham Forest 4 and 5. These are the sort of things people will be looking at. I mean, Ola Aina might even prove to be the solution there for Nottingham Forest if you're looking at that sort of combination. And there's obviously going to be a lot more 4.5s come through as well. Of the 4.0s, um, Taylor Harwood Bellis at Southampton
yeah.
is an almost certain starter. Don't know too much about the collie who Leicester have got in from Atalanta. Has played quite a bit for Italian underage teams. Whether he's going to be first choice at this stage is to be confirmed. But Harwood Bellis, we pretty confident will be a starter for Southampton at 4.
Yeah.
The game will open late this afternoon, tomorrow, or on Thursday. And once it's open, I can then tell you what's happening with the rest of our week. If it does open today, me and Suj will be podding again on the opening of the game tomorrow. If it doesn't, it's People's Poll podcast. So keep an eye out for a potential vote tonight. And then I imagine we'll be going Thursday. If it still hasn't opened by late tomorrow, then I'll probably do an Ask James on Thursday and me and Suj will pod on Friday. That's how it's going at the moment. Clayton, thank you very much for your time. Good to discuss initial thoughts. Anything else from yourself, my friend?
Matt, all good. Thank you very much.
Right, good stuff. Be nice to each other, everyone. Don't fight each other too hard for the lowest ID. And cue music, please, man shot.